So, okay, so I'm just going to hit the recording. And then what I'm going to do with these recordings, I think eventually, because I can't keep them on the cloud with Zoom, there's only so much storage space. Is I'm going to load them to YouTube and put them behind like a private link, so that they're only accessible to the people who have the link. So they won't be on my YouTube channel. They'll just be available through my YouTube channel. All right. So I was looking at my, I know from from doing this live with a bunch of students that I had originally loaded too much on day one. Like I thought that we were really going to get into alternative materials and techniques on day one. And really it was more realistic to do really more of the brainstorming and the wordplay and the design and all of that, and hope to end day one with a design on foundation. So I'm thinking, and I'm looking for any kind of feedback that you may have on this. I think day one would be great to just get our designs actually ready to go and on foundation. And again, I think almost everybody, if not everybody, I think everybody in this class knows how to do that. My students at Fiber College did not know how to put a design onto foundation, but I think most of you do. But anyway, that's part of it. And then I thought tomorrow it might make sense to do all the alternative techniques and kind of figure out how we're going to put those into our new designs, if at all. I mean, you can use them or not use them, and then do finishing techniques on day 3. But of course, with all of this, it's flexible. So if everybody, you're all pretty experienced. So if everybody gets a design down by like 12:30, when I thought we might take a break, then we'll do something different this afternoon. Does that sound like it makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So what I usually like to do, this class is a little different because you all know each other, but we do introductions, but I'm going to ask, since you already kind of know each other, I'm going to ask, what made you want to do this? What made you want to commit to 3 days of hanging out with other rug hookers and working from brainstorming through potentially finishing something?
I can start because I've actually taken most of this in bits and pieces before.
You have in bits and pieces.
I want to see the whole thing from beginning to end, your whole thought process.
Okay.
How you go right from the beginning to the end. Because I'm basically, I have hooked basically in isolation. Even though I've been hooking for a long time, I was for a while with a guild and they had their way to do it. It was very structured. And when I came across my Parker's Cove series, I realized that I had some hang-ups and some areas where I had gaps in my knowledge, or my skill set. So yeah, I want to see the whole process from beginning to end.
Okay. And of course, the caveat there is that this is my process and the way I teach it, right? Like you could take something like this. I've been aware of that since I've been writing my book. And there are several places in my book where I put that caveat in there. Like, this is how I do this thing. There are probably a dozen other ways to do this thing,
Well, this is it. Well, and I have taken Deanne Fitzpatrick courses, so I kind of know her process a bit, but she never did really cover finishing much. I'm thinking that was 10 years ago. I can't remember really.
I think Deanne and other people can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but her finishing techniques are super rudimentary. And that's fine. It's just the way she likes to do it. But I think she just folds her foundation back and bastes it. And I think another one of her finishing techniques, I paid for one of her pre-recorded classes on how to mount a finished piece. And it involves a staple gun. I mean, it's really It's really simple. Like her techniques are really simple and mine are a little more complex. I thought we'd also do, which I didn't do with my students because I just didn't when I taught this at Fiber College, I didn't take my sewing machine and the corded wool, but I thought I would also show, aside from the twill tape binding, pillow finishing, whip stitching, but also how to make a corded wool binding with the zipper foot and the whole 9 yards, and then how to get it onto the rug. Because
Okay.
not everybody has done that before. And that was a little too, I don't know. I mean, I might teach that to my students this year at Fiber College. Maybe I'll take a few more things with me. As it was, my car was like loaded to the gills with everything from the studio for these students. But yeah, I mean, and that's a prime example, right? Because Deanne finishes her pieces in the most rudimentary way. And, you know, meanwhile, I've got like 3, 4 different ways that each one of them is more complicated, and I don't know. And again, you know, it's personal preference.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I'm with you because I did a lot of Deanne stuff when I first started rug hooking. I was in Victoria, I had nobody, my little buddy down the hall, we were both learning together, bought a kit from her. And then I watched some of her finishes and I saw her with a guy who just finished his first rug and she said, "Oh, you don't even need to iron it. Just fold it over and just sew it. Just sew it." And he's stopping. She's like, keep going. Like, and I felt for the guy. But anyway, and then, yeah, you're right. Here's her frame that's pre-made and then that someone made.
Yeah.
And yeah, just that thing you've just folded over and kind of basted, really. Get that staple gun, done. And I mean, hey, her stuff looks great. So there is
Absolutely.
that too. I mean,
Yeah.
but myself as a professional, I want my stuff to look good front and back.
Yeah.
And over time, like I know myself, I've inherited or been gifted some vintage hooked rugs, and you know, they've got glue all over the back. There's no way I can fix them. Like they're kind of shredding. And it's just sad. And then I have some others that are just like peachy. It's worth it if you want it to last. I mean, if it's just going to be, you know, like what do you call that? Like fast fashion on your wall, it doesn't really matter. But if you want to make something for your kids or for, you know, whatever, I'm selling my stuff. So yeah, do you have pride? But anyway, I'm not knocking her. I'm just saying her, and she has other people finishing her work for her now.
Yes.
So she doesn't even do that.
Yeah.
But can I ask another question?
Yeah.
I'm in this for many reasons, and yay, thank you very much. You know, you're so generous with our group, and this is a lot of time for you to put in, and I know you've got a lot on your plate, so thank you. I just finished an exhibition, a 2-person exhibition, which most of you know, and that involved 8 months of like pedal to the metal every day in my studio, hook. And what I found was by the time I was at the last month and I knew I still needed to make 3 or 4 pieces, my well was dry.
Yes.
In terms of my creativity, because it moved from it coming from your, like for me, my ideas more come from my heart and kind of spirit, you know, and all that. I'm about nature and all that. And man, that well was totally tapped. And it was like, okay, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to make stuff. And then honestly, when it got put on the wall in the gallery, immediately, I could see what I needed to do to make it better. It was like, shit. If I had my hook and some turquoise, I could transform that piece in 5 minutes. You know, it was that simple. So now, one more story. Really, also, I'm here because I have, through that process of being in my studio for days and nights for months, I've developed a really, really severe wool allergy. It's bad. It's bad. I was able to kind of dance around it. No more. It's wheezing. I'm in our office. I'm not in my studio. We have to deep clean it. We have to take every bit of wool out, scrub it top to bottom. So today I can't even use my frame. It's just too contaminated. So I bought a knitter's loom. I bought a 24 or whatever, really wide knitter's loom, as wide as the frame. And I have a little one. I've had a 12-inch that's here for this program. And I'm going to weave my base because I can't use any of the linen that's in my studio. I'm going to ask Martina if she's got some uncontaminated. But for now, I'm just going to make my own base to weave on. And I just went downstairs, looked through all my old quilting stuff from back in the day. Yay, not an ounce of wool on it. So that's a lot of the reason why I'm here, is to try something really new and in a process that's in depth, where I won't just say, oh, that's not going to work. I'm going to make it work. And thank you for being my supports through this, because, you know.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think that 3 days is really conducive to that, because you'll be able to sort of think things through. And you know, I think part of the reason I've been dragging my feet on making all the prototypes for my book is because I know it's going to start to feel like that production mode.
It's not a good feeling.
And it's not a good feeling. You know,
I want to now make one-offs, like just you know, like for yourself, write an article.
Yeah. I think
comes from your heart.
I think I've mentioned this before, but in my time making pillows for Beekman 1802, I made about 200 of them. And I'll tell you something.
That's like,
I cannot ever go back to that kind of work again, because it now in your case, you were making bona fide art pieces for an exhibit. I was doing true production work, but you were that, but it's informative to know that can still start to feel like too much.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I needed a year for that. I needed a year. So yeah, I'm still, you know, true confessions. Like I am actually pretty darn flat right now. I'm pretty low. I talked to my daughter yesterday and she said, Mom, what's wrong with you? I'm like, ugh, like I'm not hooking. I've got all this beautiful wool. I'm dying to literally dive into, and I can't.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of in this right now. So this, thank you. Perfect timing. This is going to push me over. In a good way, I believe.
Yeah, and I think as we go through, you know, like I like to do some journaling and wordplay and stuff like that, borrowing from one of my favorite poets who told me a story. Jean already knows it. And I'm hoping that like maybe through those exercises and the writing exercises, like the visuals will start to turn on for you in terms of, well, I've got this silk and I've got this cotton and I've got this other stuff, all this non-wool material. And what would it look like if this vision was interpreted through those materials instead of the wool that is clearly not going to work for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Laura Salamy's allergic to wool too. I think that's why she started working in other materials.
Yes, she did. And I mean, it's not impossible. I've got gazillions, and I'm going to head off to Fabricland to get some flannelette, some broadcloth, some chiffon, some netting, like, you know, start shredding and playing with that.
hit the discount bin. Hit the stuff that's discounted.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Try
The remnants.
Try it, the remnant bin.
I will.
Remnant or a t-shirt.
Velour is great because it stretches into a nice rope.
Hey, yeah, I will look. But anyway,
that's another whole class, isn't it, Beth?
Yeah, well,
it is kind of.
We're going to get into that tomorrow.
We're gonna
rip it outside. Rip it outside. Lots of
Laura Salami did that great class in the studio work on using alternative materials. You know, to her they're not alternative because she's allergic too. So
yeah. I've spoken to her a bit about all that, but
and I use the word alternative just for lack of a better term, because honestly, it shouldn't be alternative, really. It should just be part of our materials vocabulary, you know, for our toolkit.
Like think back, right? Beth, you're right. Like think back to, like we talk about the traditional maritime, you know, the using old. It wasn't all, you can be sure it wasn't all wool flannel.
It wasn't all wool.
Yeah, it was
Mhm.
stockings, it was blouses, it was dresses, it was whatever, kids' old t-shirts, it
Yeah.
was whatever they could get.
I'm pretty
I
sure
have
that
a- I have a 70-year-old rug here that my grandmother started, and it's not wool.
right.
Yeah,
I can tell
Yeah.
you some kind of nylon polyester thick, that thick stuff
Mhm.
came out then. That's what it is.
oh, I'm trying to think of the word. There was some stuff and it was kind of pressed in, there's a design like kind of pressed into it. They used to make dresses and stuff. I can't think of the word. I will though. Might have
Yeah.
been that.
Anyways, yeah,
Something happened in rug hooking when it became more commercialized in the 20th century, and then you sort of had the whole rise of the McGowan thing, and that's when things I think started to become more rigid. It's almost been like a bell curve, like it started out not real rigid, then we went through this like really rigid period, and now I feel like we're coming out the other side.
You are right. And that's actually been a lot of what I've been thinking about. I've been like married to Martina Lazar and she's been custom dyeing stuff for me. And, I can't use it. I'm going to try in the summer after this has been a few months of a break, but
Or maybe outside.
Mhm.
yeah, outside. But then I was thinking, why do I feel like just what you're saying, that I need to be relying on that?
You don't have to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
again, look at Laura's work. Laura's work's amazing.
fantastic. I know, I love
No
it.
wool in that. No wool. So
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think I know Jackie. Do I know you from Jackie?
I don't either,
It's
Jackie.
JC.
Oh,
Jason.
JC.
Yes.
oh, I thought you all knew each other. I'm so sorry. So
No, I've
JC,
JC's been in a class with me, I think.
Yeah.
yeah.
in the
So
studio.
introduce yourself and tell us, what you're hoping to get out of the 3 days.
Well, I'm happy it's in April because when it was going to be in January, my husband and I don't like the cold, and so we escape. And I don't take my hooking with me on our winter travels. So, but I was interested in doing this because I often find that the vision in my head and the idea that I have isn't what ends up in the rug. Although sometimes it doesn't even end up that it could be on the rug because I just abandon it. And sometimes I get too much in my head about what would make a good design, principles of design and my style. And that's where things get abandoned sometimes, or that I actually do a rug, but I feel like it's just not the vision I was excited about way back at the beginning isn't what I ended up with at the end. So I wanted to have a different perspective and hear the way you do things to see what pieces would make sense for me that maybe can help me take a different path than what I've been doing with the rugs that I do. I mean, I've done a lot of rugs from patterns, but the rugs that I do myself, like, I don't feel like any of them this is great. And I'm as excited about the finished product as I was about the idea when I had it.
Okay. And this is complex because I find that none of my pieces look exactly at the end the way I envisioned them either. But there's like this, and I'd love to hear from other people on this too. This is a great topic. There's like this adjustment and give and take and flow throughout the process. Like right now I'm working on that art piece, Bring It Up Alive. And when I sketched her face and then I got her face on the linen. And then when I actually hooked her face, it changed on me. And I don't even know exactly how it changed on me because I swear I hooked my design, but it did. It changed, and it changed in a way that I like. I like the face, but it's not it's not exactly as I envisioned it going in. And so I feel like there's two parts to this. And again, I'm looking for other people's input too. I feel like there's two parts to this phenomenon. One is being comfortable with the change. In other words, not being too married to that initial vision. I think that's one. And I think there's this competing thing, but that can also work with, of as the piece evolves, like notice what is evolving away from the original vision that you really aren't going to be able to live with, and you're going to want to pull it back toward your original vision, and what things as it evolves are kind of like, oh, okay, it's going in this direction, I can live with that. You know what I mean? Does anybody else have any comments on that experience?
And I think for me, I'm fine with the evolution. I like that. I don't end up with, I'm not one of those people that this is what it needs to be. I like that evolution process. It's just that I don't know, like I dabble in watercolor, and I have a problem with my watercolors where I will just keep at it. And like, I don't know when to stop. And I don't know if it's part of that, oh, this will work this way, or, oh, I'm good with the evolution, but then somewhere it goes astray. And then I kind of just I get in my head. I think that's the real problem, is I get in my head. Did I go too far? Did I not go far enough? And I could convince myself of either of those things at any point in time.
Yeah, I mean, I can really relate to that. And I feel like some rugs have to go through an ugly period too.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like some rugs have to go through the adolescent ugly stage. Like, they just, like, I've had pieces where I'm just kind of like, this is not working. This is never going to work. And sometimes I'll like put it down and I'll give it at least an overnight, and sometimes a week, and then come back and look at it again. And then I start to be able to, even when I'm tempted to just like, this isn't working, put it aside completely. Sometimes fresh eyes, like sometimes like you get too, like I get too in my head, start to be hypercritical of the piece, decide I don't like it, when I really need to just walk away from it for a little while. I'm really curious about what the rest of you think of this. This is a great topic.
I have a question that relates to this, JC, is, how much planning actually goes into these pieces, both for you, JC, and for you, Beth? Because like I'm sitting here because I'm a planner freak, right? So I will plan it out ahead. But the one thing I miss all the time is color planning. I tend to do that on the fly, which is weird because that's one of the things I'm known for. But yeah. But I kind of, it's like a dance, right? Or a game of dominoes. One thing goes one way on a rug and then it changes everything else. You put the wrong color in and it changes the whole thing. Rip it out and put in a new one, and all of a sudden you got a whole different effect, Yeah, I just don't be afraid to rip out, and don't be afraid to keep going and leave it in and see where it heads. And then if it still doesn't work, then rip it out and go do something else. You can approach it both ways. I had one teacher tell me, don't rip anything out, just keep going. And I thought, no, I'm not going to ruin good linen that way, or good backing that way, or good material that way. Yeah. So I ripped stuff out and redid it.
You're right. And I think every single piece I made, like it'd be all drawn on the linen. Yay, I loved it. Start hooking it. It's like, no, rip, different color Sharpie, redraw, like adjust. And you just keep tweaking, and it'll take you 4 times as long as you thought to make that rug. But ideally, at the end, you're relatively happy. Another thing that helps, which I know that, and I just shared with you earlier, if you can pin it on your wall after it's done, if you're not really happy, or even if you are happy with it, and live with it for a bit, and then JC, like all of a sudden, oh, maybe it's just that blue, or maybe
Mhm.
if I took out that little bit, or something, it may come, you get more perspective. Because when we think about it, if you're on a Steady camp or what, you just see a part of your pattern the whole time of your
Mhm.
piece. And then when it's done, it's, oh, you hem it, done. Like, and then we don't spend, I don't spend a ton of time really looking at it. I mean, I admire it on the thing and think this and that, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, I
There's a-
have actually a piece of carpet tack installed on the wall here in my studio that's just permanently there. And I will often take stuff off my frame and go hang it up on that piece of carpet tack, because then it's on a wall, first of
That's a
all,
great
instead
practice,
of
yeah.
a frame or the floor. It's the way
Yeah.
I would actually look at it. And I can get away. I can just leave it up there for however long I want, because it's just a wall here in my studio. It's not like, oh, I can't leave this half finished thing hanging on the wall here in the living room or something. It's just here in my studio. It can hang there as half
Yeah.
finished or whatever, as long as I want it to get a different perspective. No, and that's why I did that.
Distance is.
And
a
it's my
good
photo
idea.
wall too, to be able to take great photos of my work, because it's a place that has great lighting for the photos.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea, actually.
Yeah.
That's a great
Have
idea.
have you tried to take a black and white picture and then turn it?
Oh,
and
yes,
in it and turn it
yes.
upside
And I
down
took
and all that?
Nadine Flagle's class, and I will take a picture and pull it into Procreate on my iPad and play around with it there in terms of changing colors and but I just, and all those things help. But at the end, it's just not, it's not a rug that I feel like I don't know what else I would do to change it, but it just isn't what I envisioned.
Yeah.
So it's probably a problem up here.
It's something that I think we should keep in mind throughout the process here, because I think we've all experienced that. Or, sometimes for me, it does become a head thing, and it becomes like an act of acceptance. Like the rug that ended up in Karen Miller's book and is, going to be at the Virginia Quilt Museum. I look at that rug and I think, I did that rug like 3 years ago now, and I look at it and I think, I would have done that so differently. I would have done something it doesn't. I think the sort of rug hooking existential question here is, do they ever quite embody everything we wanted for them? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. I guess some of my work comes closer than others, but I haven't made as much like strictly art as some of the rest of you have. But even my art pieces, I don't know, maybe I'm just like the forever critic, but it's even like, Nancy, you were saying you looked at one of your pieces and you're like, oh, if only I could have done this or this with it. Like, do we ever stop doing that to ourselves? I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know. But anyway, that's a great perspective, and I'm glad that came up, because I think it's something to keep in mind, and I think it's something that I think it's something everybody can relate to.
And I do. My hope is that this sketching thing, like our, some deep planning, deep sketching, will help us to clarify some maybe subconscious things even, or unexpected surprises, which are often the very best.
Yeah.
Might help us to evolve in
And
terms of
for me too, like maybe it's because I'm a writer, and I actually feel more flow writing than with any kind of visual art. Like I think really first and foremost, I may be a writer, but but for me, bringing writing into the process really helps me, because I find that words are really visual for me. My husband, he's not secretive about it. My husband is on the autism spectrum, and very visual. Like they are, you know, people on the spectrum, very, very visual thinkers. And, you know, I am so visual with my writing and with my words too, that I have sometimes thought to myself, well, gosh, maybe, I mean, I know I'm ADHD, but whatever. But for me, words are like a huge catalyst for the rest of it. So that's why I start a lot of my classes that way. So I find that, like, we're going to do an exercise using 30 words. And I find that that helps me figure out what is really important to the particular thing that I'm trying to convey in the piece. You know what I mean? So maybe at the end of a piece, when it didn't quite pan out exactly, that you can kind of go back to its inception, like what is it that I may be missing with it? What element did I not include, or what part of that message isn't coming through it somehow? Which I realize is a huge gray area. Like that's really touchy-feely and hard to articulate and put into a method. But I think sometimes the words you started with are a good way to evaluate the piece as it evolves. If that makes sense.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, Stacy.
Oh, why am I here? My head is always a jumble of words and thoughts, and I should write more. So, so I do a lot of thinking out loud. So I read through your packet last night and I was like, well, shit, I do this.
Yeah.
So I think that, as Beth knows, like I am still struggling with like my identity in this world of sort of fiber art, both with punch needle, which I came to first, and now rug hooking. And I am constantly struggling with craft versus art, you know. I make things for craft, and then I also am working now. This year I'm committed to working on a series that I'm considering to be art, and I'm doing it with rug hooking. And so I'm just taking advantage of anything and everything, even like if it's like a repeat or a reinforcement of things that I know, I'm just like a sucker for it right now. So because I have never, aside from like patterns that come out for International Punch Needle Day, or like that welcome sign behind me that came from Amy Oxford, I've always designed my own patterns. When I started doing this, I didn't realize the world of patterns that were out there. And somehow patterns to me felt like buying someone else's pattern and working with them just felt so like paint by number. Like I didn't want to do that. Like I just wanted to I wanted to do the tactile experience of doing the rug hooking or the punch needle. And so I was just making my own things to whatever my skill level was at the time. So now I'm like, I'm struggling with what is my style? What is my look gonna be? What am I making? And does it matter if they all look different? And so that part of your booklet was really helpful for me to see, like, to actually break down the different genres of rug hooking and look at them through that lens. But even then I was like, am I any one of those? Does it matter? Can I be any of those? Like, so, and then I am also so I have that, and I am going to be taking a punch needle certification, the Oxford certification, this spring, in a crazy online way. I don't even know how I'm going to handle it, but it's going to be crazy. So, but that's part of, I think it's also like, some people are like, do you really need to do that to go teach this? And I'm thinking, well, technically it would make me feel better and more qualified. But then I'm constantly somehow seeking justification, and like that what I'm doing is legit, that I actually have the skills. So I think I have the skills, but I don't believe it yet. So courses like this, where I can like be reinforced and like learn little nuances of what I've been doing already. It's just, like I said, I'm a sucker for it. I was going to say something else and I lost my thought. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if for no other reason but to spend like 3 days. And in terms of the, like, so the genre examples that I give in the design section, are really, so a lot of times when I teach design, I'm getting people who have never deviated from a commercial pattern.
Mhm.
So they're at that starting point, right? But I think the other thing about these genres that is helpful is it kind of gets you to look at rugs in a different way.
Mhm.
I think once people develop a style, they kind of supersede a particular genre. You know what I mean? Like that's their style and that's who they are. Like where do we put Deanne Fitzpatrick, for example?
Right.
Like you could put her in abstract, you could put her in kind of loose representational with her wonky houses and her she has landscapes, you know, there's all these things. So I like to put all of those different genres that are easily identifiable in for people who might be just starting to design on their own and need inspiration and also need like the technical aspects. Like, you know, design can get a little bit mathy, you know, when you're trying to figure out like your border size, or if you're doing a geometric and you're trying to make sure that it doesn't like run off the page halfway through an iteration of that geometry. You have to do a lot of measurement and stuff. So I think it's important to know all that technical stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and that's why I put the tips for each one, like just things to think about if you're working, you know, in a landscape, or if you're working with an abstract, or that kind of thing. But ultimately, I think our style starts to develop outside of trying to put it in any particular genre. It's just our style. It's just what we do.
I guess my approach is sort of like with cooking, right? Like you need to know the recipe inside and out before you can really start to deviate from it, because you need to understand why the
Right.
things work the way they do. So I think I'm just starting to branch off and alter the recipe a little bit.
Yeah.
And I also lately I've been hanging on to something from one of the, it was like a lecture session with Haley Perry, where basically like she gave this great, she was like, just keep making art and it's going to be bad art and it's going to be good. Just keep making it. Don't worry if it's bad art sometimes too. Like, and I think that's what I've been hung up on, is like, sometimes I just want to finish the piece. I don't want to have to go back and tear out things, because also I'm such a frugal person. I'm like, I don't want to waste the wool. It's going to shred.
Yeah.
You know, but it's like, I'm trying to get myself to just keep moving forward, even if what I make was satisfying in the process, but in the end it was kind of like, meh. It's like you just have to make a lot of bad stuff in order to get to the good stuff. But I don't ever want to find myself in a production mode either. Like I've been in that mode with Punch Needle when I first started, and I was like selling it to earn my craft money. People were asking me to make stuff, and I'm like, I don't want to make stuff anymore that other people want me to make. Like,
right.
I don't want to keep making that same pillow design or that same coaster design. But yet I also know it's what funds my ability to buy nice wool, you know? So anyway.
Yeah.
But with the art part, it's just like, I just want to know the rules so I can like bend them and break them, and then just keep making crap stuff to get to a few good pieces, you know? So
I think you develop a brand too, like even like this, I do it over and over and over and over and over. I mean, I will say one thing about all those months. I'm getting pretty clear on what my brand or look, you know, like where it's recognizable, where people say, oh, that's a so-and-so, or that's a Deanne Fitzpatrick. That's a, you know, you can recognize the style. I guess, is that the word, style, but the color, the, you know, and Stacey, you're right. Like, you know, just, I don't know if I'd call it bad art, but you know, it's an evolution.
Yeah.
And ideally, or I don't know if that's even true, but for myself, I'm really interested in landing on a brand, like on something very consistent that's easy for me to tweak, to change colors, to change textures, to change a few elements in the piece so that it's different and says something different. But it is, you're right. I mean, it's just make. And you have to let go of the judging it. And really interestingly, I look back on some of the very first things I did, like literally the second piece I did that wasn't a pattern. I did one pattern and then the sailboat thing. It's one of my favorite pieces. You know, it's weird. And at the time I was like, oh, you know, you can see 10,000 things wrong. And oh, that loop's crooked or hook, you know, whatever. I better rip it out. Don't bother that, because in the long run, you don't notice those little things. But it does evolve. And, you know, really, we're pretty hard on ourselves.
Yeah, well, that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Jean, did you have something to add to that? You looked like you had something to say at one point there.
No, I'm struggling with my chair,
Oh, so
trying to get it to go back.
one of the things about and we'll get into the word exercises, but one of the things that I just saw ironically on Instagram was this video of an artist, and this film looked like it had to be decades and decades old. Like it looked like maybe even like first or mid 20th century. And he was an artist, and he was talking about that same thing that Haley was talking about with, you know, make bad things, make good things, you know, and where do you even draw the line? But he was saying that an artist has to be able to work in like in privacy, like an artist has to be able to work for months or years or whatever it takes, and they have to be able to work without somebody looking over their shoulder, without a lot of external input. Like they have to be able to work essentially like in the dark, metaphorically. And this you know, this film was done a long time before we had social media, and it just like hit me listening to this man talk. We don't do that now. We work in public. You know, a lot of us work in public. We you know, obviously artists have shows which are supposed to be public, and that's all great. But in the process of creating, we have social media now. And, you know, so like one of my rugs that might be in what I think is its adolescent ugly stage might get posted in that stage. You know what I mean? Like, and then the act of posting something or a progress pic or something like that, I think that feeds our self-doubt. I think it feeds, because now we're starting to think about, and I'm getting much better with this with my social media. I post something and it's like, whatever people think, they think. I don't really care. But it's, I think it's easy to get tied up. Like it's almost like a cluttering of the process if there's too much visibility during the process. This is just something that struck me this week, you know, in response to looking at this. And I'm wondering how that has also changed our evaluation of our pieces as we're going through them. Because we're so public now, you know, I think all of us have social media sites. Because we're so public with what we're doing, do we feel less able to have something that doesn't look like it's coming together right now, and then take the time to really work with it and not get too anxious about it?
Yeah, one of the things I've done is if I'm not sure about an idea, I'll start out with something small and just small in size, just to see, you know, is this going to work, this color scheme, or is this going to work? Color schemes are easy. I mean, you can rip the stuff out and rehook it, right? But sometimes the design just doesn't come together. And that's a little more harder. That's like when you do what Nancy does and you rip it out and you redraw it. You know? which is a pain in the patootie, but you do.
It
But
is a pain.
I'm sitting here looking at the wall at a piece that did not work. And that's what I've been glancing at all this time. And it's, you know, got this purple sky and it's a pumpkin. So it's orange and black for Halloween, you know, a jack-o'-lantern, and this awful moss green grass, which should not have gone in there. And no, but I look at it and I keep it because it reminds me that not every piece is gonna be perfect, and it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Because from that, I learned not to put those colors together. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I
Oh.
think we're just constantly interrupting our own flow.
Well,
You know what I
that's
mean?
it.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, I think it was, wrote about the state of flow, where you get in this zone where nobody, you don't hear anybody. You're in your own little world, focused on what you're doing. And that's really important for artists to get in that zone a lot. And it's really hard for people who have kids and family around them. And that's where I say anyone who has young kids and they're trying to rug hook or be a rug hooking artist, I say, whoa, lady, you know, or guy, you know, all the more power to you.
It's like Karen Miller, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Because it's
Yeah, I don't
hard.
know how
Become
she
her
does it.
brand. That's become her brand.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of artists who are working off of that motherhood and parenting thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did it. I
It's
mean,
hard.
I have kids, but I only started because of the pandemic. Because they were in remote school and I was like, I didn't have a job and I was like, what am I gonna do?
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it is hard. It's hard for me even with dogs underfoot, let alone, you know, I raised 4 kids. They were pretty grown up by the time I started this. So yeah. Yeah. I think that does create a whole new challenge. Anyway, I think this has been an amazing conversation. So, you know, like if I were teaching this or facilitating this in like a traditional venue or class, like I would have had to be looking at my watch and be like, we have to. But I think in this venue and in this context, it's really good to have these conversations because none of us are beginners here, right? And these are the things that factor in at a different stage in your you know art life. So I welcome this kind of conversation, even if we, you know, I know that we're going to get through all of this material. So I just want to put that out there that I welcome this kind of conversation. So the way I've taught this in the past was working with environment. But you don't necessarily have to do it that way. If you've been doing a lot of landscapes or things based on environment or even inside environment, outside environment, you can kind of take liberties with this. But I loved this. I loved this thing that I learned from Stuart Kestenbaum, who for a while was the Maine Poet Laureate. And I had him out when I was the president of the Historical Society here in my village. I had him out to do a talk. And he talked about this then. And it turns out he has an entire book of poetry where a couple of the sections are built around this. It's called How to Start Over. And it was written in, it's copyright 2019. So we were quite a way into the political situation in the United States that had changed drastically and that a lot of us were pretty upset about. And anyway, you know, so some of the poetry is political and philosophical, but some of the poetry is just, you know, he lives on Deer Isle, Maine, and some of it is very environmental as well, because it's impossible to live on the coast of Maine and not express what you're seeing somehow, in my opinion. It's either going to come out in poetry, it's going to come out in painting, it's going to come out any beautiful place you live in, it's going to come out somewhere. But at any rate, he was at he was at a one of the art schools, and he used to be the director of Haystack, in fact, which is a very well-known art and maker center on Deer Isle as well. And he asked the kids, or the participants, in this case, I think they were all young people, to give him 20 or 30 words. Just give him 20 or 30 words, and he would create a poem out of those words. So, like, here's an example. They gave him alphabet, danger, flippant, gray, regularize, Sabbath, stilted, sweetener, and table. And he wrote a poem called Coastline. It's above the gray, the gulls cry in their own alphabet. It is danger they're talking about, or just birds being flippant, reminding us they've been following us, hovering behind fishing boats, circling the dumps, and their cry passes from generation to generation. If it's a song, it's a stilted one, no melody really, just a way to regularize want. They're looking for the next opportunity, the table set, each morsel a sweetener of existence. Brief lives for us all, lifted by wind, holding ourselves steady in the Sabbath of the sky. Now, isn't that beautiful? Like, so, like that could have been written on Get
Not
Hooked at
worthy.
Sea, right? Right? Like, so that's really beautiful. And so I was kind of taken by this idea. I thought, well, what would happen if rug hooking students just like got 20 or 30 words that were related to some kind of scene that they want to express on a design? Like, what if they just got a few words over and not even obligated to use them all? So you might write 20 or 30 words down around a design or a scene or something that you have in mind for this rug that we're going to do. And like, what would they be? So that's the first exercise.
Beth, what's that guy's name again, please?
His name is Stuart, and it's spelled Stuart, that kind of Stuart.
All right.
Kestenbaum, Kestenbaum.
Thank you.
He's amazing. He's just a fantastic person. His wife is a visual artist.
Okay, 30 words.
Yeah, like even 15 to 30. Just something to kind of get your visualization going. And then you can let me know when you're done. I don't want to rush you. I'm gonna go pour a cup of tea and then I'll be right back. How's everybody doing?
I'm done.
Are you done?
Mhm.
Does everybody have their words?
Yep.
Okay. So the second thing, and then we'll share after this. The second thing is you can write a traditional haiku, a short poem, a prose piece if you're uncomfortable with poetry. Just try to relate them to each other somehow. It doesn't need to rhyme. It doesn't need to employ complete sentences. It doesn't have to be an explanation of your rug design for anyone else. And you can also, you can also do some doodling, around it if that helps. It should be related to your rug design, but it's like we talked about before, not everything that comes to you at this sort of brainstorming stage has to end up in it.
I forget the rules of a haiku.
I think traditionally they're 5-7-5.
Okay,
Is that
right. Okay.
is that right?
Yeah.
I think there's many forms. We
Yeah.
should actually get Bob Geis, who's in the community, to teach a poetry class.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That would be neat.
Oh.
How we doing? Still working?
Yeah,
Okay. No, fine. It takes a while. I'm like
I
I'm
may never be done.
crossing out. And again, don't apply perfectionism to it. It's just a tool for visualization.
Easier said than done.
I know.
I'm done.
Okay.
It's no masterpiece.
Oh yeah, mine is really just like words strung together in thought.
Mhm.
Okay, fine. I'll just be done.
You don't have to feel rushed.
No, I'll keep going. So,
I think I know what my topic is now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. So I feel like this exercise, and I use it in a less formal way myself. I just kind of sit down and write. I feel like it helps bring that to the fore. Like, what am I thinking about? What's on my mind? What am I, yeah. How about the rest of you?
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah. Does anybody want to share what they have so far?
Sure. This is excellent. This is excellent because there's all of a sudden, like, there's so much I'd like to say.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is corny. I'm not gonna, okay, I take that back. It is what it is. It is what it is. Okay,
And you can start with like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm thinking if anybody wants to start with their word list and then go to what, so that we can kind of see where it came from, you're welcome to do that too. All right, I'm sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
no, that's fine. So I was grabbing as many words as I could, but I'm gonna call this communion. In the stillness of this moment, in this place I know so well, I feel the majesty of its nature and am one with its beauty.
I love that.
Thank you.
So what's going to be fascinating to me is to see how that becomes visual. You know, that's really cool. One thing that I don't usually bring into this exercise, but I'm just struck by it now in response to what you've written, is Meryl Cook's admonition to feel that in your body. You know, Meryl Cook is really big about that. She's like, where do you feel this in your body? And then what does that look like? Which might be really useful for your piece.
Well, you know, I taught, whoops, falling off my chair. I taught meditation and Qigong for years and years, and spirituality is really huge in my life. And that is what I feel it when I'm outside, like in nature. It's just like, oh, like let's just really, we are one with this. We are really one with what's around us. And we're so busy, we often overlook it. Just
That's
the
right.
simplest little thing, right? Like right now here in Alberta, buds, little teeny weeny, just a very pure little, it's such a joy, right? It's the joy, it's joy. But yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, Marilyn and I've spoken. I think we're quite a bit like on the same page. And I've had strokes and stuff in the past, and it just really shifts your whole way of looking at the world and your life and your environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think for some people, health challenges become huge wake-up calls, and the trick is for us to be in that mode without having those things happen to us. And most of us can't. We just don't. We just can't.
You're right. Yeah, it changed my life in every single way. Yeah.
All right. Does anybody else want to share?
I'll go next, because then
Go ahead,
I have to hop
Stacey.
off and go to
Oh.
PT, and then I'll be back. So I'm not going to read you my list because it's like twice the assignment.
Yeah.
Once you start writing words, they start coming out. But I tried to do a haiku because I always find it good practice to really focus down to the barest minimum message that you can create that still captures. So I gave it a name because Nancy, I didn't think about a name, but you're right, it needs a title. So it's called Camp. So for those of you who aren't from Maine or Maritime, a camp is a cabin. In this case, it's basically a one-room place, essentially. So it's called Camp. Straight pines guard the peace. Squirrels chatter, loons call low. Family returns.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That is the essence of camp, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Right? Because our camp has these like 30-foot straight pines all around it, which is giving me palpitations right now because I have some I need to remove. But
I was going to say they're beautiful and they're scary.
Yes, I have to get some cleanup done, Beth. I know you'll appreciate that.
Yeah, we have the same thing at ours.
Some calls out right now, but yeah. So for me, it just captures the way I feel when I'm there. It's not like a particularly remote location. We're right next to we're in a compound of distantly related relatives, but it's just, if you can capture the right moment when no one's out, and about, you get sun through the leaves and sun through the trees, and there's sort of like sentries around the cabin. So it's just kind of a nice spot.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So it's probably what I'm going to try and figure out how to do as an image.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm actually going to hop off because I need to drive to my PT. So
okay.
I'm back in about an hour.
Okay. And I was thinking we might take a break from people are going to need to get lunch or whatever, depending on your time zone. I was thinking we might take a break, what do you think? 12:30 to 1:30?
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe I'll come back on at 1:30ish then.
Okay.
I'm gone until about 12:30 now.
Okay. And we're going to start drawing.
Okay.
So,
in the time that I'm gone.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Is it 11:20 where you are, Beth?
What?
Is it 11:20 where you are?
Yeah, it's 11:20.
About an hour.
About an hour. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Bye.
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 Okay, JC, do you want to share?
Sure. So I did a haiku also because I felt that it gave me a structure that I didn't then need to think about, and I could just think about the concept.
Yeah.
So mine is called Discovery, which was one of my words from my list. Shape, color, texture, sensual snapshot of life, a pattern of awe.
I like that. That's really wide open, isn't it?
And it's my list, the things that inspire me and that I want to put into rugs or a painting or whatever, are things from nature.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I am finding too that nature leaves us with like so many options in terms of design because we can be really literal with it, or we can do something abstract that's just like reflection of, or makes us feel the same way, or you know what I mean? Like it's just like it just gives us so much latitude in the way we choose to go about a design. So yeah, I am thinking, I have this, it's a production pattern, it's commercial pattern, this Maine Mountains pattern that I did for Making Magazine, and the theme of the issue was lines. And because the theme of the issue was just lines, but I was very inspired by the way the mountains look here in the fall, I was forced into an abstract. I was forced to express that in an abstract, which was really at that time out of my box. It was like out of my usual wheelhouse. So yeah, working with nature is amazing.
Mhm.
Jean, what do you got?
Not a haiku. I wasn't smart enough to narrow it down. I'm looking at it now, crossing out words like crazy. 'Cause it's just prose and ideas, partial, a lot of sentence fragments. But anyways, it's in order to understand, we live backing onto a green space. So our backyard is backed onto a green space, and the lady who had the house before us never planted a lawn in the backyard. So it's been wild meadow. So that's our lawn. So this is no name to it. It just says joy and peace in our natural meadow. Wildlife making their presence felt in the warm spring air. Living in harmony. Bright sun, clear highs singing of the birds. Smell of fresh soil, the rough texture of the raised beds. Blue sky, light fluffy clouds drifting on the breeze. The smooth, cool rocks. A sense of belonging and wholeness. A place to relax in our own natural meadow. That's it.
Yeah, it makes me want to like be there.
Yeah.
That's where I just came in from. That's why I just came out
Yeah.
there working in the garden.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and so that scene has a lot of elements in it. So do you think that you'll do something very detailed, or do you think you'll try to cull that down to an essence?
I'm gonna have to cull it down to an essence. That's, if I did it in detail, it would have to be a big rug, and I'm not in the mood for a big rug.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I'm gonna handle it, actually.
Yeah, I think that's where kind of the drawing comes in, and you just start crossing more things off. I mean, I had this list of a lot of words like sunset, rays, mountains, circling birds, redemption, pain, relief, texture, abstract, fulfillment, diving, retrieval, soaring, water, rainbow, questioning, hope, silken, banking as in birds, colors blending. That was my crazy list of words. And I think where this came from was yesterday I went on, it was really warm here yesterday. I went on a 5.5 mile walk with lots of pretty steep hills in it, which I'm feeling today. I'm like, I get up and it's just like, oh. But at one point, the road is high enough. First of all, I walked out to a spring. There's like a spring out there where you can fill water jugs and stuff. And at one point, the road is high enough that you can see like through the trees, and you can see the snow-capped White Mountains. So like I could see Mount Washington snow-capped in the distance. And then this bird of prey, it was enormous. It wasn't an eagle. That would have been really cool. We do have bald eagles here, but it wasn't. It was some other kind of enormous bird of prey, just like swooped down right in front of my field of vision. And it was just one of those moments, you know, it was just one of those like, wow. It was like a real nature wow moment. So I ended up writing, and this is more like what you did, Jean. Like I just wrote fragments. Birds of prey soaring overhead, silken feathers, banking and diving and questioning in hope for what they seek. Snow-capped mountains, water flowing, sunlight's rays on redemptive landscape, illumination for the creatures below. So like what I'm thinking is kind of like it's not only literal, it's also metaphorical. Like this whole metaphor of nature providing answers, like for us, for other creatures, illumination, really. So when I go to draw this, I'm going to have to try to, first of all, figure out, when I think of this scene, I'm thinking about all the textures that are in it, which kind of leads to what kind of materials do I want to use with what kind of textures, and how can I make the design somewhat metaphorical as well as literal? Do I do an abstract? Do I do, you know? So I don't know. But at any rate, I think like it's a good starting point to try to, it gives you like a broad view, and then from there you can start crossing out and saying like, what are the most important elements of this that I want to convey? Does anybody have any questions about that? And I also, in the notes, I say, think about this piece of how this piece of writing could be a catalyst for either future longer work, like a blog post, an essay, an editorial collection, a short story, and also how it can be a catalyst for maybe more than one piece. You know, not everything has to go in a single piece. Sometimes you want to do pieces that are related to each other. Like Jean just got done. How many pieces?
35.
5 pieces that are all related to one another. So, you know, think about that too. It could be that this design that we do to apply the alternative materials and techniques to and all of that to go through this process isn't the final piece in whatever it is you're thinking and feeling in relation to your writing prompt.
You know,
So, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, this is really interesting because I've already edited that little poem, right? But it does. Then I started thinking, I haven't written a blog like since I switched from being a holistic nutritionist to, you know, an artist, I will call myself. And this actually got me thinking about things I could share, like even just sharing with you guys about that, talking about that. I had 3 strokes. I never talk about that and how that completely changed everything. And that's what I should be writing about, like just acknowledging that and saying, you know, you haven't heard from me for a couple of years, this happened, that happened, I moved, blah, blah, blah. However, there's a theme in my life, an underwriting, overriding, whatever theme that never stops. And it what's the word? It influences, you know, I wish it was more things that I, you know, choices I make and the directions I go with my life. And da 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 da. And then even ask them, have you had a traumatic event that was life altering? And if so, how did that affect you? I'd love to hear. But anyway, just you know, and I hadn't had any ideas to write of what to write about or clarity forever. So thank you, because this really,
Yeah, it's like a great little exercise, and as you can see, it only takes like 30 minutes.
it
You
was
know,
fantastic. Thank you.
it's fast, and you know, another exercise that I've brought in for inspiration for people. It's not not really in this class, but it was in another one. I used it, is the grounding exercise that is used in mental health practice and in anxiety control and all of that, where you just go through each sense, you know, like, what am I hearing right now? What am I seeing? What am I feeling? Are my feet on the ground? Like that full grounding is the full sensory grounding, puts you back into your body and into a more immediate mode of thought, as opposed to where we usually are, which is all up here, you know, with all our distractions and all our things going on. And I think up here is where our creativity can get lost and tangled up and complicated. So I like these exercises because I think they are clarifying, and there are some clarifying questions too in your packet, like as you think about your scene, whether it's literal or abstract or whatever it is, like what time of day is it? What season is it? How is the light working on the elements? Is there motion in the elements? What are the lines and angles that interest you? You know, that scene I saw yesterday from the top of that hill, I just saw so many like lines. It was just very angled, from the angle of the trees to the way the mountain was sitting, and then this bird coming in like in a line of its own against the whole thing, like just right across my field of vision, like cutting it, you know. What are textures that interest you? Will you draw them in or just use a textured fiber to express it? Because, you know, as we know with Deanne, right? If you take a landscape class from Deanne, I've heard this from multiple sources, and maybe some of you have taken this class. She's going to sit you down with a blank piece of linen. You're not even going to get paper first. We're doing paper first here. You're not even going to get that. She's going to set you down with a blank piece of linen. She's going to give you a Sharpie, and she's going to tell you to just put in like a horizon line if you want one, and maybe some trees and a mountain. It's going to be like, you know, Bob Ross in the beginning with his pretty little trees and stuff, just like that. Very, very like gross level, non-detailed, and then everything else is done in the hooking, like everything. And then she comes around and she throws like just bundles of fiber onto your frame, and from that you work in your detail and your texture and all of that stuff. So
as like, don't start with a plan,
right,
just sit down and see what happens.
yeah, I mean, I feel like I fall somewhere in between like Deanne, who has like just see what happens, and like the people who are very, very planned. Like I don't do nearly as much upfront planning as a lot of rug hookers I know. I don't color plan up front, except in the most general way. I just don't. So I've had people ask me to teach color planning, and I'm like, I can't really teach that because I don't do it. You know. So I'm happy to refer them to people who do and can. So, you know, those are just some of the questions related to that. Like, you know, are you going to draw them or just use textured fiber to express it as you go? Do you want to add words to the design itself to emphasize a particular emotional aspect of it? So I just read this book called The Isolation Artist, and it's all about Robert Indiana. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Robert Indiana's work, but he used words, numbers, letters in a very graphic way to create emotions and feelings when you were, you know, viewing his art. The book, unfortunately, was really about how he got taken advantage of in his older years by lots and lots of art world people who were basically having him sign things and reproducing his work on all that stuff. It was a really intense read, but this makes me think of Robert Indiana, who's actually, his pieces, many of them were almost like the highest expression of graphic design. So, that's a thought too. Do you want any of words, letters, or anything either obviously or in the background or hidden or whatever? How do you want to use that, if at all, in your work? Are there combinations of hard lines and angles and soft swoops and curves that interest you? There's this design that one of the big studios has. It's actually a commercial pattern that usually I don't reference commercial patterns for this sort of thing, but the thing has like hard it's called River Rocks, and it might be Searsport. It has hard diamonds running down the center of it. And then it's just, the rest of it is like swooping background, just flow behind these hard diamonds. And that juxtaposition I really like. A couple of my friends have hooked that. Even people who design their own rugs just have fallen for that particular pattern because of that juxtaposition. And then what colors in the scene appeal to you most that you might want to build the rest of the design around? Like, I was really taken by the bright blue, purple, and the white snow still on those mountains yesterday. Because we're not even, I still have snow in my driveway, right? It's like 65 degrees out there today, but I've got snow in the driveway that hasn't melted because it was like 5 feet high at one point. Just that purple blue with that white on top of it that was so stark, which is a challenge because it's hard to even get wool in that color, but some other materials come in that like bright, outstanding white. So these are just things to think of as you design. I don't think I need to go through. I usually have to give my students a lecture on imposter syndrome right about here at this point in the class, but I don't know that I have to give this group that lecture. I mean, so basically what I say to them, and it's in your packet that I sent, I put in yesterday, the biggest obstacles in, first of all, I tell them it's a judgment-free zone. Like my workshops are always judgment-free zones. And then I usually, when I say that, I usually get the stories from students who have been in some really unsupportive art environment where, the teacher's coming over and literally erasing their work and saying, do it this way, which I think is just horrendous. But, I usually tell them, you think you're not artistic, creative, properly trained. You care too much about what other people will think. You're afraid of making a mistake, however you define a mistake. You feel like you don't measure up to someone else in the room who has more experience, more training, what you perceive as better ideas. If I fell for that one, there are a lot of people I've had in my classes I would never, ever even begin to teach, including this one. Like, if I really went with the comparison thing, you're afraid your piece won't turn out the way you initially envision it. It might not, and that's okay. And I wrote this like 2 years ago. You're remembering some discouraging thing some insensitive and poorly informed person said to you in the past. So those are things that I encourage students to just kind of try to let go of, because that's poison. It's toxic. It's just toxic to your creativity. And often I am working with people who are a lot newer to design, and they really need to get that shoved out of the way before they can feel free to do some drawing. So I don't know how you like to approach this. Some people like to approach it doing like a small sketch first, and other people like to dive right in with the full size. So however you like to do it, you know, we'll probably spend most of the rest of the time before lunch just sketching. Of course, if you get it done further, and you want to move on to something else, we can do that too. But, and then also in your packet, there are the things that Stacy referenced, which are just basically pointers and tips about different genres of rug hooking design. And I don't feel like we need to go over each one of them. When I teach my design class for beginners, I go through every single one of those and talk about the tips for each one. But I don't know that we need to do that in this context. How do you feel about that? I don't really know that.
For me, something that you said earlier about style develops beyond genre, I think it's going to be helpful for me to not think about those genres. I learned to rug hook from Barb Carroll, who was primitive rug hooker extraordinaire. Every year I did an annual small group workshop with her. I just adore her and miss her so much. But my style has definitely been going outside of that primitive, which I like. But then that's where I get in my head about, am I a primitive rug hooker or not? So for me to focus on the genres is not helpful.
Yeah.
Because it's where I then am trying to slot myself in, and I feel like I don't fit in any of them.
Yes, and I think that's valid feedback. Because like I said, often with the genres, I'm working with students who are new and they need a starting point. So like I started out as a primitive rug hooker too, because that was the influence that I had from my particular teacher. And she was a primitive rug hooker and I think remains a primitive rug hooker. And I like that style too, but as I start to really become freer with my own work, it turns out that's not the kind of design I do. I've done it for my commercial patterns, but not all of them. But yeah, I've kind of also gotten a field from that. And so, but if anybody has any questions, if questions arise, you know, in terms of any of the math or anything, you know, and we're going to talk about this later, like getting a pattern on the grain is really important to me. Leaving enough linen on the frame, bisecting. When I go to draw a design, I create and I can turn the computer because I have a big piece of paper here. I make the size that I want using like rulers and straight edges and everything, that assuming it's a rectangle or a square. It may not be, could be a circle, could be something totally abstract. And then I do bisect in both directions on my piece so that I have points of reference of where things are going. Even if I do it definitely if I'm working from a photograph, but if I'm not working from a photograph, even if I'm looking for symmetry in certain areas, or, you know, I want to make sure that my horizon line might not be straight in the middle. I use those reference points as I'm working. So that is a technique thing. I guess what I can do is move my, and you can either pay attention or not, because everybody has their own way of doing this. This is just how I do it when I start to draw on a large. I'm going to put this back back to this giant window I have, even though there's another giant window there. Let's see, lift this up. Bring my giant piece of paper over here. I buy paper on rolls so that it can be like pretty big. So sometimes I start with a sketch that I've done in a sketchbook and sometimes I don't. And feel free to either pay attention or not. Like you might already be sketching and that's totally cool. Also, I like art pencils, but I don't use them exclusively. What I don't have in here is an eraser, which I should get. I don't know about the rest of you, but I do a lot of erasing. I'm not trained in sketching or anything like that. I don't have any formal art training. So for me, sometimes to get the thing the way I want it to look takes a little time and a lot of erasing. All right. So just in terms of tools too, I like to use these squares. I know not everybody loves these, but I really like the way these work. And I think I'm going to make this piece 18 by 18. Gonna put this down here. Or maybe even 16 by 16. So if any questions arise while you're, or anything you want to add to the conversation, by all means.
I'm developing another series. This is scary.
Did you come here this morning with a series in mind, or did this just happen?
This just happened.
Sorry.
I have to define the limits of it because it could get carried away.
I mean, you know, you've had a couple of days to. You've had a couple of days since the last series.
Yeah. I still have to get hanging sleeves on these.
To get what?
Hanging sleeves of some kind.
Oh, right. Yeah, so this is 16 by 16, and I'm just going to put faint lines at 8 and 8.
Okay, that's it for that. I'm combining stuff from about 3 or 4 sketchbooks here.
I'm just making my warp and I'm gonna make it out of ribbon.
Oh,
Or not, well, it is a loom, but I'm gonna make my foundation, I should say.
I have never done that. That is fascinating to me.
But I was a weaver since 1970. How old am I now? Jeez, I don't know.
yeah.
But that was my thing, so I'm very comfortable with it. And this is a whole new thing. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for sharing it with us. I think that's going to be pretty interesting for the rest of us to see.
If it works, total experiment, right? And Jean, she there?
Yeah, I'm here.
In terms of hanging, you know
Yeah,
that gallery I'm in? Like it's an art gallery, right? It's a blue chip gallery. I had stuff in frames. She took it out.
really, what'd she say?
She pins it on the wall. She said, I love, love, love the oh, well, what do we call that? Like the texture on the
Okay.
sides of the pieces. And I like to just put them on the wall just as they are. So she just puts little pins in them and hangs them like that.
Wow.
I know. So I'm just saying in terms of worrying about that, you might not have to. Just put a couple of pins in it.
I mean, that's how I hang my pieces at home and at Hooked in the Mountains and also at Rug Cooking Week at Slaughter Village. They're all up that way, pretty much tacked.
Yeah, yeah. Map packs is what Deanne uses. They're from like Staples and stuff like that. I just
Yeah.
use really small fine nails.
Yeah, I like to use the fine-headed nails so that the nail head disappears underneath the,
Yes.
yeah.
And she she really likes doing it that way. So I thought, geez, I guess I may as well get her. Anyway. I may as well adapt it. Never mind the frame. It's a lot of work.
And expense too, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I've got a frame right here I'm looking at thinking, geez, I didn't even know that was there. Anyway, hope this isn't too slippery.
Huh.
I'm going to incorporate this ribbon into the piece, I think, somewhat too.
Well, yeah, I would think it would give that opportunity.
Yeah.
You know? Like it's gonna really be a unique aesthetic.
We'll see. Yeah, this might be my whole new thing, right?
Well, and the thing too about that is, we are accustomed to, we are accustomed to covering our linen, unless we're going to paint it or unless it's part of the overall design.
Yeah.
But if you are creating your own foundation,
Here we are.
you might not want to cover it all. It may be so, it might just incorporate right into the design.
Yeah, that's what I'd like. I mean, it is just that polyester ribbon, like from what we have here, Michael's, but I don't care. I used to weave with it and it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
What?
Oh,
Well, if I don't lose one thing, I lose the other. I put my pen, there it is. Problem is, I'm looking at this and the detail I need to get in all this subject that I want to do is quite high, which means either a very large rug or narrowing what I do or several smaller pieces that are just one individual subject.
Right, and it kind of depends, you know, it depends on what you feel like doing, right? I mean,
Well, there's a couple ways to go with this. Way back, about 3/4 of the way through the Parker's Cove series, I thought my next series was going to be Nova Scotia wildflowers,
yeah,
endangered ones, eh? But the problem with that is getting photographs that I could draw from that weren't going to be copyrighted by people.
yeah.
So I thought, well, I could go get my own photos, but then you don't want to be tromping all over the area where you've got an endangered species, right? That's not pretty good and very good either. Maybe leave that to the professionals. But I do have some stuff in my own backyard. I don't know. Maybe I'll start with the trees. I've got leaves here. That's what I was looking for, was the leaves that I had from the yard. Not all of these are in our yard. Whoops, sorry.
Sometimes too, when I'm working on a piece and I can't get the design to look exactly the way I want it right off. Like I'll like work on an element of it and work on an element of it, and it's just not working. And then I will actually just decide that I'm going to leave that element alone and go work on a different one. And then that informs how the one that wasn't working should look. But that again is probably because I'm really bad at totally pre-planning anything.
Okay.
Like I thought I was going to do this series of 8" by 8. Well, they're a weird size because I'm putting them in a window mullion. I think I'm going to start it in June. I thought I was going to start it in the beginning of the year, but I think I'm going to actually start it in June and make it a series about my 58th year of life.
So I can just tell you how helpful this is already, because I don't have time to think about 9 million things. I have to get something down and move forward.
Right. Yeah, I can totally relate to that because I'm an overthinker. And of course, you know, like not to like ruin that benefit, but you know, you do have time, but it feels more urgent when you're in a workshop setting.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, because I could work on this drawing for months. I've already been working on this concept for months, either really in my head, or I do a lot on my iPad with Procreate.
Yeah.
Like, you go into my gallery and Procreate, there are tons of drawings. None of them has ever made it beyond that stage.
I think what's kind of beautiful though too is that I think artists all fall into these same funks, you know? And it's just nice in these kinds of gatherings to get the affirmation that there's nothing wrong with you. You know, it's just this is what we get ourselves into. This is what human psychology does. It stalls us. And then when you talk about it, you can find different ways that people cope with that same thing. Or sometimes I'll try to get very literal with a design and I realize that it's outpacing my personal inclination and even competence at doing any kind of fine realism, you know? And then I have to kind of pull back and say, okay, you know, what do I want to do? What does fit with my style and level of artistic expertise? I think of Rockwell Kent. There are several Rockwell Kent paintings, both in the Farnsworth Museum here in Maine and at the Portland Museum of Art. And I just love Rockwell Kent. I love the bold shapes and the high contrast in his shading, and nothing is ever too super detailed, but he still conveys like the feeling of whatever it is. And he does a lot of naturescapes. So I think sometimes too, we have to let go of, again, comparison, or should this be more refined, or whatever it is. And of course, the other great thing is that even if you know, like this art piece that I'm working on upstairs, that's on my frame right now. I think I have 3 different colors of Sharpie going on that because I've changed it.
Yeah, that's the funny part, right? What color was the one that's really the good one now? I can't remember.
Yes, I know that the black one is
Yeah,
not the one because that was the first one.
but gee, all of a sudden, the one from before that looks pretty good too. Yeah. It's funny.
Yeah. Oh my
We're
God.
so hard on ourselves, really.
Well, and because of the way I put the way I've been doing, I used to do what you do, Beth, is that I have a big roll of paper, and I might sketch small initially, but then I would move over to the big roll of paper. But the last few I've done, I just sketch small and I grid. I grid my paper, I grid my linen, and then I freehand onto the linen.
Yep. That's a great idea.
But then I also, my grid is a different color Sharpie. That adds another layer of complexity in Sharpie colors. Because then sometimes I get confused between a grid line and a design line.
Yes.
Of course, every now and then somehow I measure wrong and my grid line isn't right and I fix it and I have to remember what the right grid line was. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Because I'm eager to go once I get to that point. So
I know. I on that big landscape that I had in Rug Hooking Magazine last year. Well, I guess it's 2021, I guess it was now. I had bittersweet vines against a stone wall. And if I had not drawn those bittersweet vines in red, I wouldn't have known what was the stones, what was the vines. I would have had no idea. Once I went to actually hook it, it was very confusing. The other thing I've done in design, if I want something repeating or I want something, this is just a tool, or I want something mirrored exactly, I will draw a template and use that. Just draw a template, cut it out, and then it can either be flipped or.
and I've done that too. And one of the things that I've done with this Procreate is if it's something that I really want it to be the right shape and I'm having trouble getting it to be the right shape with my hand, but I have a photo of it, I will import the photo into Procreate and trace it.
Yeah.
And then I have it.
Yeah. You know, when I teach beginners, I mean, obviously I want them to pay attention to copyright, but I also tell them that, especially if they're primitive hookers, I tell them, do you have a cookie cutter that looks like this thing? Right. You know? And that helps some of my beginners not only to feel more confident in their drawing, but it gets them it nudges them past fear and imposter syndrome. And maybe they won't use a cookie cutter or a template every time, or even as they progress, but sometimes it really is a good tool. Like I've done that with my own photographs. I've created something based on something I took a photo of. Like I'm ready to put this bird into this design now, and I'm kind of like, okay, how do I want to draw that? Where is it going to go? Do I want one bird? Do I want 3 birds in like a line? And then in my own work, I often have things in, I have things in multiples of 4 a lot because I have 4 sons. and they're like my world. So that creeps in.
That's neat. That's great.
Yeah.
So I'm still here. I'm realizing that my setup for Zoom is where I normally spread out. So I need to go to a different work surface for,
No problem. I always like workshops to be really free that way. Like nobody needs a hall pass to come and go.
I'm missing my studio right about now because it'd be so much easier to do this in there, but
Yeah.
yeah, this is okay though. This is gonna be quite a challenge with this ribbon because it's super slippery. But it'll be interesting to see what it ultimately does. And if it doesn't work, hey, it doesn't work, right?
Right.
Just an experiment,
Exactly.
which I love anyway.
Hopefully too, you can get some foundation that doesn't have, you know.
Well, I should probably be using silk, right? But I don't, I'm realizing I don't have enough uncontaminated. I just bought some new silk that didn't touch wool. And I don't have enough to make a warp and to hook. Well, maybe I do. I don't know. And the woman I bought it from is away, so can't get more. But I might simplify all this.
Of course, now I'm struggling with what I thought was going to be the central element. I'm thinking of leaving out entirely. I'm a little surprised.
Isn't that kind of the best part, though?
I guess, yeah. Like, I thought I was going to put that bird in here. And I'm not finding a place to put it where I think it doesn't like distract from the landscape itself. Maybe the bird is another rug.
Yeah. Go with what's happening, right? I think another thing that like I'm feeling right now is to not feel this has to be a piece that's going to be shown anywhere, or
Right.
you know, it's just a piece to enjoy the process and work through this, get through this workshop in a really great way.
Yeah.
And then from there, right, this is a great
I
opportunity.
agree. The pressure is off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's really important.
Of course, the pressure should probably never really be on, but here the pressure is off.
That's right. How many times? Yeah. All right. It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, I think I like this thing better without the bird. I thought the bird was my central element when I started drawing. I'm like kind of disappointed. I don't know. I'll get your opinions when we get to the show and tell part.
When will that be? Not in an hour.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're ready for that. Because I think what I'd like to get through today is getting the piece. Of course, in your case, Nancy, you're making the foundation. So this is an exception.
That did me today. Yeah, but then the hooking should be pretty quick, I think. 'Cause I know
Yeah.
exactly what I'm gonna do, but
You know, getting it onto the foundation today would be great. And then tomorrow we can sort of dive in. You would have overnight to think about what kind of materials and textures and things like that might make the design work.
right.
And then as we go over all the different techniques that I go over in the alternative materials and techniques section, you can kind of think about that, you know, like what,
Mhm.
if you want to, some of you, like Jean's already done this, but if some of the techniques some of you have already probably used, like Nancy and JC, you may already recognize some of them. But if you want to have like a piece of scrap foundation, I know in your case, Nancy, that's going to be hard, to like, you know, try them out as we go together with them, or you can just watch them. I mean, they are in your packet too.
Mhm. You know, on that note, has anybody ever washed linen? Like, I'm wondering if I could wash the linen I have, because I do have some, but it's just been embedded within my mounds of wool in my studio, right?
Yeah, I've never intentionally washed it. I've had it get rained. I've had patterns get downpoured on.
And were they okay?
They were okay. They were not as, you know, the linen wasn't as crisp after that.
Right, but maybe I should try that. Just put it on, like even just rinse it and a little bit of vinegar and something to see if I could get the wool out of it.
Yeah, you know, like a really gentle.
Yeah, gentle wash, maybe a 15-minute. I don't know, that might be even too much, but yeah, just in my little utility sink. This is gonna be a teeny weeny piece, guys, because I gotta try it out.
That's all right. Sometimes the little pieces are really fun. Like I'm really enjoying doing these little 5x7 landscapes that are on my Shedicamp frame.
Mm-hmm.
They're just these little things, and I'm doing them sort of Deanne style, just like with a pile of stuff on the Shedicamp that I just pick as I go. And it's nice to do little pieces.
Yeah, I never really do live. I do 12 by 12s, but this is gonna be, I don't know, this is totally, I'm kind of liking the silk way more. I can't go with, you know what it is? I can't go with acrylic ribbon.
It's too slick.
Yeah, and it slides, yeah, slide, so
Yeah.
this will be better. If
Yeah.
this works, and that big 32-inch loom I've got, this knitter's loom will be like, yoo-hoo, the cat's meow for me. I do need to, so I think ideally I need to source a wholesaler for silk, you know, or something, so I can buy like a bolt of it,
Yeah.
cut it and dye it, but I don't know where that would be.
Well, yeah, see, you're in Canada too, so I don't know. Jean, what would be a wholesaler of silk in Canada? Do you know?
I I'd still find it cheaper to buy from Dharma down in the States.
Really?
Oh, really?
In bulk. You can get 10 meters plus and you can get it dirt cheap.
Okay, what's the name of that place? Sorry.
Dharma, Dharma.
Okay.
Having said that, I haven't ordered from them since I moved 3 years ago. So
Well,
I don't know what prices will have done.
I'll look and see. Thanks.
Other than that, I go to the thrift stores and I buy old shirts and jackets and stuff
Mhm.
made out of silk.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
So the place I get it in the States too, although Dharma might be a little cheaper. I have a wholesale account with Darn Good Yarn.
Oh, yeah, I love Darn Good Yarn. Mhm.
Yeah, well, you might be able to get a wholesale account with them. I have a wholesale account with them, and I buy both silk fabric to dye and silk ribbon. You know, like
Okay. Yes,
you
I'll
know,
try that. That's a great
like
idea.
the sari that they cut apart. The sari,
Right.
yeah.
Try it, because I do
And-
like your stuff a lot.
Yeah, and you can get skeins that are undyed, so that you can do whatever color you want with them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They actually introduced me before I did this, any rug cooking to sorry. I tried to knit something with it. One of their patterns.
It's weird to knit with. I've tried knitting with
It's
it.
hard. Hard
It's
on the
hard.
hands. It's really lumpy.
It is. Maybe I'll try putting this bird. I'm just going to try it, but I don't think the bird is making it in. I'm going to try putting this bird in a place I didn't think I was going to put it.
If you want it, you want it, eh?
I'm trying to figure out if I can make it work at all, because it was such a neat moment, but it may not be, just may not work.
Tell me. Okay, let's try this. I'm gonna make noise.
That's okay.
I mean, my printer's gonna be shooting stuff out here. That was interesting. That's not what I wanted it to shoot out.
It's not cooperating. It's not doing what you told it to.
Well, I'm just not sure what I want to tell it to do. I think maybe if I do this. Now. Out of curiosity.
Nice for you. This class could not have come at a better time. I can't believe it.
That's good.
Perfect for me to really push myself here and not just be pouting anymore. Not pouting, but kind of moping, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think part of it too is like moral support. You know?
You're right. You're right. And this is inspiring because it's an opportunity to just take this time and try what I've been saying I'm going to try. I'm not doing because I wasn't really motivated, but now I am.
It's like a little bit of pressure, but it's gentle pressure. You know?
Yeah, no, it's more just engagement, I think, being engaged.
Yeah.
And that word thing was fantastic, that exercise. And look, we can look forward to following Jean's new series, right?
That's right.
Right.
I always love seeing your new ones when you pop them up.
Well, the thing is, I have these sketched already. What I want to do is blow them up like about 5 times the size they are.
Oh, yeah. That makes
Do you
sense.
have- do you have like Photoshop or something?
What I have is something called Photo Studio 6.
That probably has a resizer, right?
I think so, but I'm not quite sure where to find it. Image information. That's
Yeah,
gonna
I'm not familiar with that, unfortunately.
The original is 6.95 inches by 9.13, 9.13 inches. And I want it to be, let me go into edit, canvas size and then image size. Damn large. Oh, crap, it's all in pixels. Okay, let's just double the pixel size. See what we get.
Okay, I have an idea for representing this bird now, but I think we're gonna have to look at some pictures of just the edge of a wing. All right, so do you want to come back at 1:30? Do you want to get something to eat? And
Yeah, and I have to do the edge of my linen. I told
Okay.
myself I wouldn't let myself prepare a piece of linen before we started because that would constrain me in
Yeah.
terms of whatever size. So I need to zigzag a couple edges real quick.
Okay. All right, so I guess I'll see everybody back at 1:30 Eastern.
Okay,
All right.
See you later.
Bye.